start with this. We now have confirmation of a subject we touched on my previous video. Former WBC Super Featherweight Champion Terri Harper is in fact moving up. She posted this via her Instagram account. It reads, "Now that the dust has settled, and with time to reflect, myself and Andrew at Steffi Bull have made the decision that it's time to move up in weight and enter the lightweight division. After spending 3 years at super featherweight and a full year out due to injury, my body has naturally grown, and it's no longer safe for me to make the weight and perform at world level. After having 6 world title fights at 130 pounds, I've experienced some of the best nights of my life, entering a new year with new goals at a new weight. With the support I have, I'm sure I will have many more big special nights ahead, and world titles at multiple weights would be a fantastic achievement."
Terri Harper is a great boxer.
Don't let that one knockout loss to Alicia Baumgartner, who I've been telling you guys for years is a good boxer herself, don't let that one loss get you thinking that Terri Harper was never any good.
Good fighters fight good fighters.
Sometimes those good fighters lose, but that's not the end of the world, and that's hardly the end of the world for Terri Harper, who I feel still has many more years left in her career and many more titles to win.
This is the right move.
If they have identified 130 pounds as a target weight that is too hard for Terri to hit at this point, the right thing to do is to move up. The right thing to do is to campaign at a higher weight, at 135 pounds. And at 135 pounds, Terri won't feel the pressure of her contemporaries at super featherweight.
She won't have that weighing her down.
Let the super featherweight division, its contenders, its champions, sort themselves out.
There are no shortage of fights to make at 130.
Even without Terri Harper in the mix, who is now going to be campaigning as a lightweight going into the new year. What I think they're trying to do is slow things down, get Terri out of the limelight for just a second so that she can sort herself out, start over, rebuild, because she is on the mend. She is on the rebound.
I think she's going to do just fine.
Though I don't think she's on a title run. Not at this time. I don't think upon her ascent to 135 pounds, she's looking to get a fight with Katie Taylor. What I think she's trying to do is continue to build upon what she already knows, what she's already done, improve and hone her skills, further improve them against what fighters are there at 135 pounds without the added pressure of an Alicia Baumgartner rematch or a
Michaela Mayer transatlantic showdown.
Will Terri Harper's punching power carry from 130 to 135 pounds? It's tricky, depending on who you're talking about, whether or not a fighter will carry power up to a higher weight because of Terri's physical dimensions, the fact that she wasn't a small super featherweight, and her age, the fact that she's only, 25 years old? I happen to think her power will carry. It will carry up to 135 pounds. I think she was a strong puncher at 130. She'll continue to be a strong puncher at 135.
That doesn't always ring true for everybody.
The situation, as it were, is specific and unique to the individual. In the case of a Terri Harper, a fighter who was on the bigger end of the spectrum at super featherweight, also a very young fighter, moving up in weight, they might feel more invigorated.
She won't leave as much of herself in the gym.
Depleted from making a target weight of 130 pounds at 135, an easier weight for her to make. She'll feel stronger. She won't leave as much of herself in the gym. Talked about some potential opponent options in reference to this move upstairs. One that almost immediately came to mind was former IBF featherweight champion that has since moved up to lightweight, Jennifer Hahn, Melissa St. Ville, Heather Hardy. There's Poland's own Oleksandra Sidorenko,
Germany's own Verena Kaiser,
Sofia Ochagwava, Firuza Sharapova. Firuza, who was very recently in action against Katie Taylor, and she didn't look out of place. She looked like she belonged. There's Anisha Bashil,
Argentina's own Yanina Lascano.
There are fights up there for Terri, perhaps not as high profile as what the super featherweight division has to offer, but perhaps because Terri's on the rebound, she doesn't want to keep a high profile. Now, this is confirmation that Terri's moving up. It's confirmation that she's not moving to have a rematch with Alicia. It's also confirmation that Terri won't be challenging Hyun-Mi Choi for her WBA super featherweight title.
And what that does is leave the door open for Alicia to take it from her.
Because I think Alicia can. Without Terri Harper there in the super featherweight division for Hyun-Mi Choi 2-turn-2, the next biggest fight for her is either an Alicia Baumgartner fight or a Michaela Mayer fight on the top rank side of things. And given how the Maiva Hamadouche unification match was scored. I don't think Hyun Mi Choi or her people want to try their luck with those judges. I mean, I would pick Michaela Mayer to win the fight, make no mistake, but the Hyun Mi Choi people might be thinking to themselves, what chance do we stand
Short of a knockout.
win a decision against Michaela Mayer when the Hamadouche fight was scored the way that it was scored? The natural choice in this situation for Hyun Mi Choi is a unification match with Alicia Baumgartner. She has the belt that Terry used to hold, and she's right there on the Matchroom DAZN side of things, where the Harper fight would have taken place.
I like Alicia to win the fight.
Hyun Mi Choi is a tough customer, a two-division champion and the longest reigning champion at super featherweight at this time. She's statuesque for the weight, though she gives up that height, gives up that reach to box on the inside. Bang, I should say. Hyun Mi Choi likes to fight. She likes to scuffle.
And I think Alicia can set her up for something big.
Let's see if it happens next year. In other news, trouble appears to be brewing in paradise as Brian Castaño says he has no offer or contract for a rematch with Charlo in February. Using very sophisticated apparatuses to translate this article that was written in Espanol, the article reads, they're working on it. They want to rush me for February, he told Ringside on air. Yes, no, it's confirmed. I really don't have anything confirmed. They say the day, the date, whatever they want. I did not receive any paper, no offer. They tested if it was for January, but to make a little war on them, that is not everything as they want. What, yes. They asked how he was to fight in January or February. They tried.
Tried what?
They tried out the fight they want, and they know what I want too, continued Castaño. Contorsi is taking care of the issue, explained the Buenos Aires native. He is looking at what date he can look good on me. They want to fight in Houston, Texas. I would have to fight again as a visitor where they are local.
Of course, God forbid the fight be somewhere neutral, right?
Right. We are working on it to see what comes out. It is a matter of Contorsi finishing, closing. Charlo, a week after the fight, already started training. It was quiet. It must be sharp, and they are wanting to rush me. We will have to see, warned the undefeated. I am training. I am traveling in weight. I am getting well. So I have no problem, said the champion of the World Boxing Organization. It's to make a little war, too. It can't be everything that they want. It would not be fair at all. And many would deem the outcome of their initial meeting as not being fair. I have to be honest with you. If that fight took place anywhere else, it would have been Brian Castaño's hand raised, and he would have been this division's undisputed champion. Post-fight, that's how a lot of people felt.
The fight was ruled a draw.
A rather convenient one, similar to the draw we saw in the first Wilder versus Tyson Fury fight, similar to the draw we saw in the Badu Jack, James DeGale unification match years ago. I mean, whether or not some of you guys out there thought that Brian deserved the victory or Jermell deserved the victory is a little bit besides the point in this conversation, because I'm just addressing that there were people out there post-fight that felt that Brian Castaño was robbed of the victory, that he deserved to go home with W, and that he is the unofficial, undisputed champion of the junior middleweight division.
What would it have meant for the Argentinian boxing scene had the judges scored the fight that way?
It's unfortunate because I think it would have meant more to the Argentinian boxing scene than the American one, but here we are.
There's supposed to be a rematch.
But what Brian is saying sounds a lot like there are still particulars left to be ironed out, that he himself has signed off on no paperwork, and while the Charlo people might be saying whatever it is they're saying, it's not a done deal, not yet, though I have to believe that progress in association with this rematch, set to go down early next year, might actually be a little further along than Brian realizes, because
they put the Tim Tszyu fight on hold for this.
Tim Tszyu, who just so happens to be Brian Castaño's WBO mandatory challenger by way of the WBO. Tim Tszyu, who very recently
dominated Takashi Inoue.
The very durable Takashi Inoue of Japan, who gave Jaime Munguia, former WBO junior middleweight champion Jaime Munguia, all he could handle when they fought. But against Tim Tszyu, he did not seem as formidable, as much a handful.
Tim Tszyu pitched a fucking shutout against that guy.
Tim Tszyu, who is Brian Castaño's mandatory challenger. Need I remind you, they put the Tim Tszyu mandate, they put the Tim Tszyu fight on hold because the story was Brian would be fighting Jermell for a second time. Yet, according to Brian, that fight ain't done yet, and it's supposed to be going down in February. per preliminary reports, but Bryan's saying something else. So here's what I think. I think the fight is further along than Bryan realizes at this time, or at least further along than he realized when he made these statements. I think that the fight will happen, and I don't think that Tim Tszyu will get a shot at the winner. What I see happening is Jermell Charlo winning that rematch. That's what I see. Jermell Charlo, who is a stylistic...
He's a boxer puncher and Bryan's a pressure fighter.
In a rematch situation between two guys, whichever one of those two guys can make adjustments, it's usually the guy that wins the rematch. Derek Chisora this past weekend fought Joseph Parker for a second time, and that services as an adequate parallel here. You see, Derek Chisora, like Brian Castaño, he's a pressure guy, mid-range to inside puncher that throws a lot of punches. And, I felt that Derek won that first fight with Joseph Parker, I did, but I felt that in a rematch situation, Joseph would be the guy that
he'd win,
is able to make adjustments, and Joseph would emerge the victor, the legitimate victor in that second fight. That's what happened. Something similar applies here with Brian Castaño. Maybe Bryan did do enough to win that first fight, and the judges robbed him of that victory. But in a second fight, Bryan's only got one way of fighting the fight because he's a pressure fighter, a characteristic mid-range to inside volume puncher that crowds a guy and flusters him with activity, whereas Jermell, he's a boxer puncher, more capable of making adjustments in a rematch situation, drawing from what took place in the first fight and what experiences he derives from it. We don't have to wonder if Jermell can hurt Bryan, because he did hurt Bryan at least 2 times in that first fight. There's a chance that he could take him out in the second. If that happens, I don't see Jermell Charlo giving Tim Tszyu a shot. I don't see him giving Tim Tszyu an opportunity. I'd sooner expect Jermell to drop that WBO title, surrender it to Tim before he travels to Australia to fight him, or before Tim comes here stateside for that fight, because Tim is a bigger draw in Australia than Jermell Charlo is here in America. That creates problems. I don't see Tim Tszyu fighting the winner of that fight unless the winner of that fight is Brian Castaño.
Not unless it's Bryan, and not unless Bryan's willing to travel.
And finally, Demetrius Andrade versus Janibek Alimkhanuly purse bid has been set for January 15th. The World Boxing Organization has ordered a purse bid for the mandatory fight between middleweight world champion Demetrius Andrade and unbeaten challenger Janibek Alimkhanuly. On November 30th, WBO's committee issued out a letter ordering the respective parties to begin negotiations. On Monday, the 20-day term expired and no agreement between the parties had been reached. The purse bid has been set down to take place at 12 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time on Friday, January the 15th, at the World Boxing Organization headquarters in San Juan, Puerto Rico. The minimum acceptable bid will be $200,000. Andrade is promoted by Eddie Hearn's Matchroom USA, while Alimkhanuly is promoted by Bob Arum's Top Rank.
They're ordering this guy to satisfy 2 mandatories in the same calendar year.
I don't see anybody else talking about this. I don't see anybody else bringing that up. That Demetrius Andrade already satisfied a mandatory for the WBO earlier this year in Liam Williams. So why are they ordering him to satisfy another? And I have no doubts that Bob Arum, who's always had a way with Paco and the WBO, I have no doubts that he has a lot to do with that.
Or it could also be that Demetrius didn't satisfy a mandatory for them last year.
Could be that as well. Demetrius Andrade fought only once last year, and that was a voluntary title defense. That was approved by the WBO, though better still, it was a voluntary title defense, not a mandatory title defense. So I don't know. Maybe the reason they're ordering 2 back-to-back fights for the WBO champion is because he didn't satisfy a mandatory for them last year, so they're making up time this year.
Making up for lost time.
So even in that scenario, I've no doubts that Bob Arum and the people over there at Top Rank, who I reiterate, have always had a way with the WBO, they pulled some strings to ensure that their man, Janibek Alimkhanuly, gets his title shot sooner rather than later. Because if they didn't want him to be in this fight, then he wouldn't be in this fight.
Does the fight happen?
Or does Demetrius Andrade surrender that brown belt, that WBO title, to unbeaten up-and-comer from Kazakhstan, Janibek Alimkhanuly? I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think the fight happens.
Eddie Hearn posted this via his Instagram account.
Did a Q&A by way of social media, and he was asked, what's the Andrade plan? To which he responded, we want Charlo if Triple G. If that doesn't happen, they'll move up to 168 pounds.
And he posted this on his Instagram account days ago.
Before news broke of the scheduled purse bid set to go down next month. in January. Those things in mind, and that being said, I don't think Demetrius Andrade versus Janibek Alim Kanuli happens. It's conceivable that Demetrius Andrade may vacate that WBO title and surrender it to Janibek before the 15th gets here.
Is this a duck?
If it happens that way, can we safely say that Demetrius Andrade ducks Janibek Alim Kanuli? Well, if that's what happens, I've no doubts there's going to be an angry mob that resorts to saying as much. I've no doubts there are going to be people out there that feel Demetrius Andrade is averting certain danger by avoiding Janibek Alim Kanuli. Myself, it depends. Demetrius Andrade is moving up to the super middleweight division because he never got to have any of the big fights he wanted in the middleweight division. He had no luck getting Charlo in the ring, no luck getting Gennady Golovkin in the ring. And the Janibek Alim Kanuli fight, while it's a good little fight for hardcores who actually know who Janibek is, in the greater scheme of things, it's not what Demetrius is looking for. It's not a big fight.
If you're Demetrius and you already satisfied a mandatory for these guys,
In this same calendar year, here they are ordering you to satisfy another one.
I'm ambivalent.
I'm torn by the whole thing because, while I understand the rhyme and reason for what they might end up doing, moving up to the super middleweight division in an attempt to become Canelo Alvarez's mandatory challenger, which is a bigger fight than an Alim Kanuli fight, and if nothing else, it affords Demetrius the opportunity to perhaps become a 3-division champion. While I understand that hierarchy of thought, I also understand that if it were Jaime Munguia they were ordering Demetrius to fight, would he move up to super middleweight then?
If it weren't Janibek, if it were Jaime,
Would this be what we're hearing? In your heart of hearts, you know the answer.
if you think Demetrius is stuck in Janibek, I won't argue with you.
And that's why.
Does he actually get the Canelo Alvarez fight?
No, I don't think he will. I think what he might do is bide his time and wait for Canelo Alvarez to relinquish those super middleweight titles, because in my heart of hearts, I don't think Canelo Alvarez is going to return to the super middleweight division. And when he doesn't, he'll likely vacate all the world titles he just unified.
Demetrius will be there to pick one up.